Now, on Friday night, Saturday morning, however you want to put it, the Chicago Bulls' season ended with a loss in the final playing game to the Miami Heat. And as you guys know, I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan. I'm not sure how this video is going to go. I've been thinking of doing an end of season recap kind of review, giving my thoughts and opinions on the past season and then bringing in kind of what we maybe should do in my opinion over the free agency period in the off season. I haven't really got a plan for how this video is going to be structured, so it's kind of just going to be me waffling on at you guys about the team that I support, about how frustrating it's been being a Chicago Bulls fan. Disclaimer going into this, I'm going to be saying a lot of kind of what I said on the No Bull podcast. I'll be not saying as much, but essentially, if you want to listen to my proper opinions over an hour-long podcast on this current Bulls team, then I'll leave a link in the description. It's on Spotify, No Bull podcast, that I was lucky enough to be invited on, but let's carry on. Now, going into the new season, this time last year, we were fighting in the first round of the playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 1 was like last night a year ago, and it was an interesting one. The Bulls went down 9-0. They fought back, they took the lead in the third, and then ended up losing in a game that nobody could shoot at all. And to be fair, that was a bit of a grim omen for what the Bulls were going to be like from beyond the arc this season. But yeah, then obviously the Bulls, we won game 2. Everything was looking so promising, and I'd give everything to go back to this time last season where we'd tied the series and everyone was saying no Chris Middleton, the Bulls might actually shock the Bucks. In the end, it didn't happen, but going into this season there was a little bit of hope, a little bit of promise. Pushed Milwaukee-ish to in the 5 games. We didn't get swept, which was kind of a positive, and AK and Marky Iversley were kind of hoping that we could bring everything back and kind of run it back again this year. And we started off really well. We beat the Miami Heat first game, and everybody was kind of looking at that as okay, the Bulls might actually be onto something this year, because last season was the season where the Bulls beat all the teams that they were supposed to beat, but couldn't beat the top 3 seeds in either conference to save their lives. Lost every game against Miami, lost every game against Milwaukee, ended up beating Boston, but not whilst they were a top 3 seed, and then obviously Golden State, Memphis, and Phoenix as well. No luck against them at all last season, but this season we started off really positively. We never really managed to go on a massive run at the start of the season, but we were beating teams that were touted to be good. You know, we beat the Heat, we beat the Celtics, we beat the Brooklyn Nets. But alongside that, we also lost to the Wizards, lost to the Hornets, and lost to the Spurs. We kind of meddled with mediocrity. We were kind of always in that 7 to 10 seed, and then we kind of drop out of it every now and then. And there was question marks kind of surrounding the team and, you know, Lonzo Ball's availability. Obviously, he didn't end up featuring at all this year, which, if I'm honest with you, as much as it sucks that he wasn't able to kind of be on the team, wasn't able to contribute to the Bulls this year, I just want this guy to still be able to walk again, if I'm honest with you. So, you know, prayers up to Lonzo. If he can play next season, that's huge. If not, then as long as he can progress in his recovery, that's probably all that matters. It was kind of, once we realised that Lonzo Ball wasn't going to be available for the rest of the season, it was almost a case of, we need to bring someone in who's going to have that impact. And then the trade deadline came, and nothing really happened in terms of trade. Chicago were one of the 2 teams in the NBA who didn't make a trade at all throughout the whole season. The only roster movement they had during the season was the odd 2-way player getting signed, like Terry Taylor, Carlik Jones, Marko Simonovic, Dalen Terry moving up and down between the Windy City Bulls and the Chicago Bulls. And then Goran Dragic ended up being let go, and in turn we brought in Patrick Beverley, which did have a massive impact. But we'll talk a little bit about Beverley in the second half of the season in a little bit, because I think it's not really said as much how poor the Bulls were in the first half of the season. We had a better second half of the season, but we had an alright schedule, an alright run-in, and we still managed to only just scrape, well, we didn't just scrape 10th seed, but we weren't able to progress up past the 10th seed, which we did have the chance to do. Every single time that we had a chance to go 500, we kept losing winnable games that if we'd have just shown up, we'd have won. And we got to the halfway point of the season and the Bulls were on a 5-game losing streak. We were outside of the play-in, and if I'm honest with you, I think the potential right thing to do, in my opinion, was to try and tank and solidify a top 4 pick. You need to take risks, in my opinion, in basketball. And that's been the main question with the Bulls. Should they have actually tried to double down and go for the playoffs? Or should they have just, tried to get that top 4 pick? Obviously, we know with the Vucevic deal that the Bulls don't own their pick unless it falls between 1 to 4. If it does manage to fall between 1 to 4, absolute scenes. But it's less likely to happen now because they doubled down to try and get into the playoffs, which has ultimately meant that they now only have like a 1.8% chance at getting the number 1 pick. So, was it a good idea in hindsight? Obviously not, but with the way that we played second half of the season, potentially, yeah. But I am under the opinion that before the All-Star break, I wanted us to kind of like slow things down, lose as many games as possible pretty much in the second half of the season, try and finish below Orlando and Indiana and Washington and have the 5th best odds in the draft lottery. Because if we manage to get the 5th best odds, it's a lot easier to move up. And that way our team gets better, because now we're kind of just in NBA purgatory, which is the worst position to ever be in if you're an NBA team. Because, I think it's even worse for the Bulls as well, in my opinion, because at least back when the likes of the Hornets and the Spurs were in NBA purgatory, they didn't have that good of a team. They just had that one-star player that they just needed to either get rid of, in what the Spurs did with DeMar DeRozan, or, kind of have a period where he's not in the team, like LaMelo Ball with the Hornets. With the Bulls have 3 former All-Star players on their roster. DeMar DeRozan made the All-Star game this year. So their team is too good, in my opinion, to be a 10th seed. And that's what frustrates me about the Bulls this season the most, is the fact that on paper, our team is good enough to compete. It's just we don't have the fundamentals to be a good basketball team. We're awful at 3-point shooting, and we can't rebound to save our lives. And that's kind of what you need. If you're getting dominated on the offensive glass, giving up extra possessions, it's not going to work. And equally, if you're shooting 30% from 3-point land and taking the lowest amount of threes in the league, it's never going to work. Especially given that the Bulls aren't exactly a massive bang it inside the paint team as well. A lot of the shots that the Bulls take are mid-range shots, so you're kind of flipping a coin on whether it's going to go in as well. DeMar DeRozan hasn't been as good from it this year as he was last year, in my opinion. Still managed to get in the clutch award, like finalization 3. He's not going to win it, De'Aaron Fox is, but I think that he's not been as clutch as he was last year in the 4th. He still scored a lot of percentage of his points in the 4th quarter, but it just wasn't as good as what he was last year, in my opinion. But I digress. After the All-Star break, obviously the Bulls acquired Patrick Beverley, and he almost brought a little bit of accountability to this team. Patrick Beverley saw that this was full of a team full of All-Stars and solid role players. The Bulls have one of the deepest benches in the NBA, at least they did at the start of the season. And it just kind of got bad. Like, it was kind of, we were being complacent, we were not showing up in the clutch. The Bulls had one of the worst clutch records in the NBA, so in games where, with 3 minutes left, it's a 5-point game, or less, that's defined as a clutch game, and the Bulls had one of the worst clutch performances in the NBA, and if they could have just made it, like, I think they were like 16-28 at some point. So we were taking games to the wire, we just weren't winning them. And even if we ended up just having that as like a 500 ball kind of thing, so that's what, if I do the maths now, 6 wins extra, that's 46 wins on the year, which is 7th, bordering on 6th. It's the difference between a low playing rank and pushing for the playoffs is your clutch record. So Patrick Beverley comes in, the impact was seen. Zach LaVine was playing like an actual max player. Yes, he didn't have the greatest of games in the Miami playing game, and we'll get onto that a little bit later, but Zach LaVine started putting up literal all-star numbers to the point where I'm kind of looking forward to how he takes a next step next year. Is he going to be a little bit more stagnant, or is he going to be taking the reins a little bit, especially if DeMar DeRozan ends up staying? We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Kobe White off the bench, obviously he's a restricted free agent this offseason, so he's obviously going to be kind of shop windowing himself a little bit, you know, showing that he can play with top quality players. And I think he's shown this year that if Lonzo Ball isn't available next season, why can't Kobe White be our starting point guard next year? It just depends on the money. He's proven that he is solid off the bench. You know, he's led the bench unit pretty well. I think he is kind of ready to graduate back into a starting role. Obviously, it's been a while since he's properly started for the Bulls. So Zach LaVine, a little bit of boost to him, a little bit of a boost to Kobe White, and in the end, the Bulls ended up going 12-7 in the second half of the season. Ultimately, wasn't good enough to move properly up, but they consolidated the 10th seed. Then lost that game against Atlanta, which wasn't great. We played terribly there as well, and then we were matched up against the Toronto Raptors. And if I'm honest with you, that first playing game against the Raptors, I was not expecting anything. I was expecting a loss. A pretty simple loss. Every single time we played in Toronto this year, we lost. I broke it down a little bit in my most recent video. You can check it out. I forget which corner it's up, but I'll put a link to it there, and there might be a link in the description as well to it. But yeah, I broke it down a lot there. The Bulls were terrible on the glass against the Raptors all throughout the season. And the Toronto home crowd is next level as well. So the Bulls were definitely the underdogs, and going into a period in the third quarter down 19 as well, you were kind of thinking it's kind of done. And then Zach LaVine blew up. Like, literally one of the best heat checks I think I've ever seen from Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine's one of those players where if he's on it, he's on it. He will make 6 threes in a row off of no dribbles. Like, he's one of the best heat check performers in the NBA, in my opinion. So he went off. DeMar did his stuff. DeRozan made them miss 18 free throws, which was quite funny. And if I'm honest with you, yes, the Bulls did well to come back and win that one, but it was more the Raptors losing it, in my opinion. Going 50% from the free throw line and losing by 4 points. You just need to make 5 more free throws and you've won. So, yeah, it definitely wasn't a good performance from the Raptors, but a decent performance from the Bulls to kind of bring it back and get themselves a game against Miami, which, going into it, I was a lot more confident than what I was against the Raptors, because the Atlanta Hawks, the team that beat Miami for the 7th seed, were better matched up against the Bulls because of how big they were inside, how good they were at rebounding, the presence, the shot blocking. It kind of, and you know, we saw it at the final game, not the final game of the season, but the game against Atlanta, the last one of the season against them. It was shown that the Bulls weren't good enough inside to kind of match up with the Hawks. So when the Heat lost that game, I was thinking there's potential that we could move up into an 8th seed if we performed. You know, we'd beaten the Heat 3 times this season. Compared to last season where we just couldn't beat them at all, it was looking kind of good. And we kind of kept it pretty even. They moved out to a 7-8 point lead at the start of the game, which is just Chicago all over, really. They don't really come out of the blocks fast. But then the Bulls kind of stuck around, kept it going, and actually took a lead in the 4th quarter. And we were good value for it, in my opinion. You know, the Bulls were playing good defense, except on Max Strus. But at the start of the game, Max Strus hit those consecutive threes, and you're thinking, why does this guy just hit the Bulls? I mean, yes, I know he did have a contract with the Bulls, but why does this guy just always torch us whenever he plays against us? It's not fair, man. But obviously, Max Strus did his thing, but the Bulls were doing really well at playing defense on Jimmy Butler, kind of limiting him. Bam Adebayo shot 1 for 9. So we were playing good defense on their key players, but it still didn't end up working. The Bulls ended up taking an 86-80 lead. Towards the end of the game, was it 86-8? They took like a 6-point lead towards the end of the game. Kobe White was like perfect from the field. He just hit an absolute clutch free to stop a run from them, and then Billy Donovan took him out for Patrick Beverley, and we scored 4 points in the last 4 minutes or something like that. And that's unacceptable, in my opinion. And I feel like a lot of the kind of the blame goes down on Billy Donovan, in my opinion. I'm not his biggest fan. I'm not his biggest hater. I can give him props when it's due. In the Toronto game, he made good adjustments and was one of the main reasons why we were able to stick around and make a run. In the Heat game, though, I do think he got it wrong, especially at the end. We needed offense, and we took Kobe White out, who's our only real proper three-point shooter other than Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan obviously was doing his hero ball thing where it doesn't really work. I tweeted about it. I hate it when DeMar DeRozan just dribbles into a good defender and then tries to just shoot a contested mid-range with about 12 seconds left on the shot clock. It's one of the most infuriating things being a Bulls fan watching the game, because as much as we know DeMar can hit that shot, just be a bit more patient with it. Only shoot it when you need to. You know, try and get people open. The Bulls have a lot of people who can make shots. You know, the Zach LaVine's, Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, Kobe White. They have people that can make shots. Patrick Williams, when aggressive, is one of my favourite players to watch because he can make shots. But a lot of the time we just go through DeMar DeRozan, and then if DeMar DeRozan's not on, we just go through Zach LaVine. And it's very predictable and very easy to stop, in my opinion. And the Miami Heat, credit to them, they played good defense in the final clutch moments and pulled away from us. So the Bulls now don't play again until October, which isn't fun. But they do have a 1.8% chance at the number 1 pick. Now, the last time that happened, they landed Derrick Rose. So let's just hope that, you know, it can just, you know, history can repeat itself. Lightning may strike twice. You know, if the Bulls can land Wembanyama, fair enough. So obviously the draft lottery, that takes place middle of May, but throughout the offseason there's going to be a lot of question marks surrounding who the Bulls are going to bring back, who they're going to let go. There's a lot of people who are either up for extension or are actually free agents this offseason, and the Bulls don't have enough money to bring everyone back at all, which does pose a bit of an issue. So a few people are going to be let go. The free agents this year are Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Javonte Green, Patrick Beverley, Derrick Jones Jr. and Andre Drummond. But the latter two have player options that if they choose to exercise, they'll just stay on the roster. And I'm kind of hoping that they both do. Drummond, in my opinion, has been one of the best backup bigs in the league this season, despite limited minutes. The most rebounds per minute player in the NBA. You know what he's going to go on the floor and do. He's going to play good defense in the paint. He's going to grab rebounds. And on a team where, you know, when it comes to rebounding, they're not exactly the strongest, having someone like Drummond there, in my opinion, is pretty helpful. He is only, in my opinion, his ceiling right now is a backup. I don't think he can start games anymore. But having him on the team is pretty good. And then Derrick Jones Jr., I've said on the podcast, the Noble podcast, one of my favourite players, has the energy, comes in and he's able to kind of earn himself minutes just because of the energy he has and the good plays that he makes. So respect to him. Now, the rest of them is kind of up in the air. Nikola Vucevic is unrestricted this off-season, so he can go anywhere. He can decide where to go. I think Vooch wants to stay, in my opinion. Zach LaVine wants him to stay. DeMar DeRozan wants him to stay. It's just if, one, we can afford him, and two, if the front office want him to stay. Now, in my opinion, I like Vucevic. I think when we go through Vucevic down low, he is pretty good. You know, the post hook, he's pretty good at that. His three-point shooting is not great, and his jump shot's not the best. It's very infuriating watching him brick open mid-range sometimes. But when we actually play to his strengths, I think he's pretty good. He's not the best on the defensive end, but he's a presence down there. Like I also said on the Noble podcast, it's strange how we tout him as a bad player defensively, but he's still up there in terms of rebounding numbers. He does grab boards. You know, he's not completely incompetent at grabbing rebounds, although contested wise he's not the best. I think getting him back for less than the max is the most ideal thing. You know, if we can get him back for less money, hopefully he'll stay. But I wouldn't be offering him a load of money. So I'd be keeping a bit more money in the prospect that Kobe White's going to want a bit, because in my opinion, I think Kobe White should stay. I think he's proven that he should stay. Like I said earlier in the video, if Lonzo Ball's not available, why can't Kobe White be our starting point guard? Yes, Patrick Beverley played a lot at the start, well, towards the end of the season starting, but Kobe White has shown in the two playing games that he can play with the starting lineup. So why can't he just carry on and play in the starting lineup next season, in my opinion? Lonzo Ball is an interesting one as well. Now, obviously, he's not out of contract until next year, but with him not being available, is it possible to maybe look and move his contract on? He's still on a pretty lucrative contract. So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I love Lonzo Ball. I want nothing more than for him to get healthy, and I feel like trade rumours, it does just remind me a lot of Derrick Rose. Now, obviously, Derrick Rose had a lot more sentimental value to Chicago, but in the same way that Chicago looked at his injuries and decided, we're just going to get rid. I think potentially the same could happen to Lonzo Ball. I think Lonzo Ball might not be a Chicago Bull next year. He's probably not going to play basketball next year, but I think he might get moved on to a team that is able to take his contract, you know, a tanking team a little bit. So I think, yeah, Kobe White should probably come back, and he definitely should be a starter this year. Two players that I don't think are going to be coming back, though, unfortunately, because I really like them both, are Javonte Green and Ayo Dosunmu. Ayo Dosunmu is restricted, so it does depend on where his offer sheets come from. You know, if the Bulls want to match it, they can, and if it's not going to cost them that much, Ayo does make good hustle plays. That one against the Milwaukee Bucks, the dunk to win us the game, was clutch. Last couple of games though, and especially in the play-in, he was kind of out of his depth a little bit. Javonte Green barely played for us this season, so I don't think he's probably going to be re-signed. I think they'll be looking at it thinking, you know, he wasn't going to make a massive impact, even though I love Javonte as a player. I don't think he's going to stay. And then Patrick Beverley's kind of one that's up in the air, because the impact that he had on the team in the second half of the season was there to be seen. And he's obviously a Chicago native. He loves the city. So what's going to end up happening with him? It'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. And then also people that are up for extension are DeMar DeRozan and Patrick Williams. Now, they're not free agents, but they're up for extension. The free agents next year. Patrick Williams needs to be tied down to something. If we can get him on a cheapy deal right now, because obviously he hasn't proven that he's worth like a rookie max or anywhere near that, in my opinion, yet. But if we can get him on a decent deal that, you know, means later on down the line, 2-3 years, if he's developed to the point where he's nearing on like defensive player of the year, all-star level all defensive team, sorry, probably not defensive player of the year, all-star level status on low money, that's good. DeMar DeRozan, however, wants 4 years, 170 mil or something like that. I do love DeMar DeRozan. I think he's great, but for the love of mankind, he's going to be 34 next year. We can't be giving him a 4-year deal worth that much money. We can't be doing that. In my opinion, I'd possibly look at getting rid of him, if not this offseason, definitely the offseason after in a sign and trade, because this team is Zach LaVine's. In my opinion, I feel like we need to get rid of the likes of DeMar DeRozan and maybe Nikola Vucevic as well, and allow some of the young talent to come through. We've seen with the likes of Lauri Markkanen, we've let go because he was a 3rd, 4th option, and he's gone and flourished in a team where he is one of the main options. Patrick Williams, in my opinion, is going to be one of those players. If we waste him as a 3rd, 4th option or bringing him off the bench, it's not going to work out, and then he's going to leave and he's going to be so much better than what he is now. And it'll be just annoying to see us throw away a lottery pick like that, a top 4 pick as well. So Patrick Williams, get him tied down. DeMar DeRozan, I'm not too sold on. But this offseason is going to be an interesting one. Stuff needs to change. Whether AK wants to rebuild or not, something needs to change, because I don't want to see another mediocre season where we're going to be in the play-in again. Literally, the 6-odd season, I started supporting properly in 15-16, so that's what, we just finished 22-23. So that's 7 seasons? 7 seasons. And we made the playoffs twice in the time I've been supporting the team. If anything, just do it for my mental health, please, because I just need the team to make a playoff run. I haven't seen the Bulls in the second round in my life. Well, I could have done in my life, but since I started following them, I haven't watched them in the second round. It's starting to weigh on me. But anyway, I've waffled on for almost half an hour on this one. So thank you guys, if you're still listening, for watching this video. Let me know what you guys think down below, especially if you're a Bulls fan. Make sure you leave your opinions down below on what you guys think is going to happen this offseason with all the free agents that we've got. Your opinions on this season, what would you give it grade-wise? I'd probably give it a D. in terms of kind of promise going into the season and what ended up happening. Let's just hope that the 1.8% comes through again and we can land Wembanyama in the draft. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe down below, and comment what you guys want to see throughout the playoffs. I wasn't able to do a playoff proper preview, but I'll try and do a first round preview review at some point, as well as some Manchester Giants stuff coming up, as well some British basketballs I want to get on the channel a little bit. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.